Lovely. And this is just for people who couldn't make it live today so they can get all this valid information. So joining us today are the three authors or creators of this fantastic resource. Dr. Gillian Judson, friend, personal educational hero, all of the above, who is an assistant professor in the Faculty of Education at Simon Fraser University, and her scholarship is examining the imagination's role in leadership learning, that's pre-K to post-secondary, and imaginative and ecological teaching practices for pre-K to post-secondary, which have changed the way that I think, feel, and behave when I'm learning outdoors. So thank you for that, for changing my world. Also joining us today is Dr. Michelle McKay. Michelle is a teacher / early years teacher, educator, who teaches in a large urban centre in Ontario. So this is not just for people with big trees and all that jazz. She completed her PhD at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at the University of Toronto in curriculum and pedagogy. Michelle's research is situated around engaging kindergarten students in teaching and learning about truth and reconciliation, such important work. Her passions include early learning, equity-based work, and inclusive instructional strategies. She provides professional development for educators from across the province on a range of topics around early learning and play. And last but most certainly not least is Clara Redford. Clara is a teacher from the Ontario College of Teachers and works in a large urban school board in Ontario and has spent the majority of her career learning alongside students in the early years. Clara, sorry, my English accent, I just want to say Clara. I'm not even that posh. Anyway, I'll move on. Clara has this passion for amplifying student identity and lived experiences as we go outside, and hopes to extend learning and learn with and from the land as we develop a deeper sense of place. Clara's love of picture books and her ever-growing collection, I think we might be the same person there, provides endless opportunities for students to see themselves represented, make connections, be curious about the world around them. Clara continues to work to amplify the voices of early years educators and students, building community through opportunities for early years educators to learn from each other and with each other. So welcome to all three of you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass it over to you and start sharing your slideshow for you.
Thanks so much, Jade. We wanted to begin this evening by thanking everyone for joining us. We're in the evening here in Toronto area, and 4 p.m. after school or after work out in BC. We really are excited to celebrate the launch of this resource with you all, and are excited to have it come to life after spending so much time having it come together. We also wanted to take a moment to thank Jade and Duncan and everyone at the Outdoor Learning Store for their support in organizing the event this evening. Jade, you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So why a walking curriculum for the early years? I began actually using Jillian's original walking curriculum resource quite a few years ago with my students. It's fabulous, and it's a K-12 focus. And we went on daily walks with students, and I remember meeting with Jillian and saying, like, are we doing this right? We've done all the walks in the book, now what? And this resource really was born out of my practice with students in the classroom, walks we had gone on. So there's new walks in this resource that aren't in the original walking curriculum. But Clara will speak to in a bit how we frame this resource specifically for an early years context, but all of the walks within this resource have been field tested with kindergarten students, so they're absolutely accessible to our early years audience, and really structured in a way to support their learning. So a walking curriculum really centers emotion at the heart of what we are doing in our practice and imagination. Within this book, we outlined 33 different walks that you can take students on, regardless of the context that you're working in. So whether it's an urban, rural, or suburban setting, as Jade mentioned, we don't necessarily have those large trees or naturalized spaces for students, but this is an accessible resource regardless of where you are teaching or working with students. The walking curriculum is a natural fit in our early years context. Many of our early years programs already have a dedicated time for outdoor learning. And this resource just helps you as an educator frame that learning in a way that is accessible to all students while developing their sense of place and enriching their understanding of curriculum or program document topics that you might be exploring through your various inquiries that you're engaging in. And it really brings those inquiries or program expectations or curricular expectations to life for children, providing them with a natural context for learning, moving beyond the four walls of that traditional classroom setting, and engaging them within their communities or the natural spaces that are important to them in their lives, making it authentic and meaningful. We hope that we've set up this resource in a way, and we think we have, that's really easy to use. It requires very little preparation or prior knowledge on the part of the educators, and we hope that we support you through that process from the beginning implementation stages of it, all the way to how are we noticing and naming or assessing that learning that's happening by engaging in walks. And one of the reasons we love using a walking curriculum is that it taps into and builds a curiosity and wonder that students naturally have at this age in the early years. The approach to learning is holistic. We're engaging students when we walk physically, we're engaging them mentally, we're leveraging the power of their imaginations and developing their oral language skills. So the possibilities for learning really become endless. And as we know, working the early years, there are very few imagination-focused curricular resources that can develop students' sense of ecological understanding through play, wonder, and walking. And this resource really helps fill that gap for you. So we hope that you find it beneficial. And there are some definitely new parts to it that Claire is going to speak to now that will support your implementation in various early years contexts that you might be working in.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Clara. Welcome. And I'm also very thankful that you're here on your own personal time to support this endeavor that we have here. I also want to thank my writing partners, to Michelle and Jillian. Thank you very much for your tireless support through this process. We learned a lot. We've become very close. And I think we're very excited to be here together for this. So I wanted to take you through what a walk looks like and how we've laid it out so that you as educators can use this resource easily and quickly. If you happen to get a copy in the next week or so, you can start using it immediately. As Michelle said, you don't need any prior knowledge or training. It's very accessible for educators. If you have a copy of a walking curriculum, you will notice that the size of the book is perfect to take with you outside. And that's what we wanted to do with our book as well. We wanted to keep it that same sort of smaller size, so you could take that book with you outside. You could reference the walks. You could write inside of it as you're walking to make notes, maybe for the next time if you engage in the same walk. We aim to make this also very accessible for all our learners. So, as Papert and Resnick say, low floors, high ceilings, and wide walls. So it's accessible to all. We want to make sure that we're acknowledging all the learners in our classrooms and all the points of entry that they may have, whether it be language or mobility or whatever it is. So the walks, they're set out with three separate, aspects to it. The first is the minds on. You'll see a little light bulb. So each of the 33 walks is set out the exact same way. The little light bulb, the minds on, we suggest activating students' imaginations, their emotions, their prior knowledge, and really we're engaging their hearts and minds at this point. Also during Minds On, we might give suggestions for the pre-teaching of vocabulary, which might be helpful as you engage on the walk itself. Then we head to the walk, the backpack. And in our backpack, we have broken it down into three sections. The first is the notice section. And as early years educators, we know that that's pretty much our entire job, to notice and name. So that's a very important part of the walks as well, to be able to notice and name. We give some suggestions here for you as educators, what you might be focusing on. The next part is the communication part. Here we also give some suggestions on what you might be asking students to communicate with you. But more importantly, we know that communication is multimodal. It's not just about oral communication or written communication. So opportunities here for students to communicate with you on the walk. Maybe it's through pointing, maybe it's through movement, maybe it's through joy of dancing and something that they have found. Maybe it's going up and hugging a tree because it's something that they feel emotionally connected to at that moment. So communication, as we know, has very many different expressions. So we encourage you to think about that as you're going out with your students and asking them to communicate with you. And the last part, of course, is the documentation. Thinking about how we might be co-documentarians along with our students and what that might look like. And we do give suggestions for you in all of the walks for that as well. The final piece in the walks, you'll see that there is a little speech bubble and a little piece of paper where we talk about conversations and consolidation of thinking that you might want to have when your students come back into your indoor learning environment, bringing that learning back with you, having all of the students be able to celebrate in that expression and what was all of their notices and wonders, and maybe some of those will actually spark some suggestions for inquiry in your classrooms, which is, you know, what we really want. We want those wonders to keep going and for us to be able to help our students keep learning. So that is basically the way all of the walks are set out. We do give suggestions in all of the 33 walks for mentor texts that can be used, whether it's in the Minds On or in the consolidation or the next day as you want to be thinking about the walk again. And extensions for play. All of our early year settings, we need that time. That's how our youngest students in the early years from K to 2 learn best, through play. So we do give some suggestions on how you might extend the learning that was in the outdoors to the indoors. These walks can be done in any seasons. They can be done multiple times. Perhaps there's a walk that you want to do in the fall and the same walk you want to do again in the spring, and see if there's any differences. See if your students wonder or notice anything different depending on the season or the changes in the land. So I think that's about it. This is what they look like, with some beautiful graphics attached to it. And we'll take questions later, but I know that Jillian wanted to speak to you about the important piece about that imagination and emotion component.
Hi, folks. It's really, really wonderful that we have over 100 people here today. This is so exciting. Just to be in the presence of folks that care and love imagination and know its value is brilliant in our educational system today. So thank you for taking this time. I wanted to echo a few things. One is I've been doing some empirical research lately on the walking curriculum. This original resource was published 5 years ago, and the participants I worked with in this study universally about how accessible it is. It is a great way to begin doing outdoor learning. It's a great way to extend and deepen your outdoor learning practice. What that research has also showed me, though, is that the walking curriculum needs to bring into greater attention the imagination part. Working with young kids, you know how rich their imaginations are and the curiosity and their wonder. And so absolutely, the walking themes will bring that out. But there's another power tool in the kit, and those are cognitive tools. You'll notice in the book, underneath every walking theme is a cognitive tool. So, well, what are cognitive tools? Yes, in this case, motion walk, the cognitive tool is gesture and movement. Well, you all kind of have an idea about what cognitive tools are, because a metaphor is an example. Baking tools help us bake, gardening tools help us garden. So cognitive tools must help us think. So when we use a cognitive tool in a walk, please do so. They're worked out in the examples underneath. Have them use the gestures, the stories, the images, the rhythms, the patterns, the heroic qualities, because those are all tools that human beings use to engage their hearts and minds in learning. What happens if we engage hearts and minds together? We remember. We have meaningful learning experiences. So cognitive tools like stories and images and metaphors and dramatic play, they all help us feel, they help us learn, and they help us remember. Now, if you're curious about what the heck I'm talking about at such a quick pace, because I think I'm out of my 20 seconds is about to end, I do provide a brief introduction, sort of I think it's a preface to the work, and there's a lot of things available. Please email me. I have a lot of resources I could share with you if you're interested in how to go deeper in terms of more routinely bringing imagination into your practice, not just the fantasy life of the child, which is a beautiful thing, but also the more routine ways in which imagination contributes to human life and meaning. So enjoy, have a fabulous time. And I have to thank Michelle and Clara for this experience, because learning with experienced early years educators has been a gift to me. So thank you.
And finally, we really would like to stay connected with you. We want to know about the walks you're doing. We want to know about the learning that's happening, and we would love to stay connected. So here's some information on how you can reach us, Twitter X, or however you want to call it now. Those are our handles. You can also reach Michelle and I at the Redhead and the Bedhead. And drum roll, please. Michelle and I tonight are launching our podcast called Why and Wonder. And it's a podcast dedicated to early years educators and all things early years. Our very first guest on our very first episode is Dr. Jillian Judson. And we talk about Jillian's work, and we talk about a walking curriculum for the early years. Michelle's going to put the link to our podcast into the chat, and we hope that you can take a listen as you're walking in the woods maybe this weekend, or walking along the street. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to Jade and the Outdoor Learning Store for having us here.
Thank you so much for joining. There's so many exciting things, books and podcasts. And we are very excited that in our spring, this is a spoiler alert, this is a secret, but for our spring virtual workshop series, we will have this fantastic group coming back to dive in for about an hour deeper into this resource. So make sure you sign up for that. It'll be on April 2nd, but we'll release that soon. Got to get through the winter workshops first. Thank you so much for sharing. I know this resource, and I have seen your work, and it just still is filling me full of excitement and inspiration to go out. So thank you so much. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Maybe you could raise your hand using the reactions button if you'd like, or type any questions in the chat. That we have maybe just a few minutes. There might be time for just a couple there. Yeah, with 103, there's got to be some questions. But I wanted to share maybe briefly that last week I was training with teachers, and we were out on a shapes walk, and that they were educators all the way from early years up to grade 6 in my local school district, and they were blown away at how their minds turned on, and how their emotions connected, and how even the principal of this school, who had joined us for this training, suddenly saw the building and the school yard in a completely different way when she started to switch on to these shapes. So I just want to let you know from a personal experience that very recently, not just in my own experiences with children, but with the adults that we've been connecting with, that it's been a game changer for them as well. Okay, a couple of questions coming in here. Any plans to translate it into French? Nancy asks. C'est possible en français?
Yes, please.
Oui.
Mais mon français n'est pas bon.
Okay, watch this space. Attendre. C'est possible. Okay, another question was, Carol asked, how do you plan for children with mobility issues?
I can take that one. My background is I have a lot of experience working in our special education department at our school board. And I would say it's not a generic answer. It depends on, what the need is. I think that as educators, getting to know the places and spaces in which we're walking first before we do that with students, for all of our students, is a fabulous idea. But exploring that and figuring out what possible barriers you may be encountering within the environment, and working with your team to try and problem solve or overcome those. So working with the parents or guardians or family members about how do they access those spaces within the community. Sometimes they already have strategies that they're using. I had a child who had some physical needs, and he was on the track and field team. He was hiking with his parents, and they had all of those strategies already in place. Working with, if you have any consultants, itinerants, special education supports at your school level or at your school board, leaning into that team and figuring out how can we make this accessible for all. But I've never encountered a situation in which a child could not walk with us because of a physical need. So I think you can also reach out to us if you're having problems brainstorming that, but I think leaning into that support team and network that you have is one place to start.
Gillian, you had your hand up. I didn't know if you wanted to add something on.
I'm just going to plant a seed that we're going to follow up with our spring tips series this spring. We did walking challenges in previous years, and we did a spring tips teaching imagination and play series last year. We're going to dive deeper this spring into cognitive tools. And I really would love a small group of folks that we can come together every week and personalize our learning, get to know each other, and really go deeper with imaginative practice. If you're interested, stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. And maybe the people who've registered for this, we can send you a little email when we have all the details of that. It's going to be juicy and delicious. Okay, last question. I think someone asked about, is it about beyond, or can it be done in your schoolyard? And Gillian answered in the chat that this is a schoolyard. This is a chain link metal fence, concrete jungle. I've done it in, the little one going around the loop of the one tree we got in the back corner. It's magic. It transforms any space. Sorry, it's your book. I'm just getting excited. Okay, maybe we have time for one more question. What kind of length of time would you dedicate to a walk?
I was just going to say that the length of time, as Michelle said, it depends on what you need at the time. But what's really important is you consider how to connect what you're doing outside to what you do inside as well. We want to see that interweaving of indoor-outdoor learning and just push the sense of the fact that learning is passive and indoors. We want to merge that. So as Michelle responded in the chat, and Clara, you were going to add?
Yeah, and maybe as you're beginning these walks and as you're beginning to engage in a walking curriculum for the early years, start small. Maybe you just go out for 15, 20 minutes, maybe 10. You'll see how your learners are. And you can start to extend that length of time as they become more comfortable being outside, as they begin to notice more, as they begin to develop that sense of place.
How beautiful. I really do want to honour everyone's time, because we said 30 minutes short and sweet, and we still got to give a little prize away. Saying that, there will be a follow-up email with links to the resources and all the information, including the contact information, so we can stay connected. Thank you, Michelle, Clara, Gillian, and Duncan, and Jen behind the scenes. I see you in there for all your work and is published and doing these fantastic things. Can't wait for more and more people to share this book and this resource and experience it. Okay, I have image quiz for you. Basically, I'm going to show you an image. I'm going to ask you what walk does this image describe. I will accept the name of the show or the name of the sketch itself. And I'm going to share right now. First correct answer in the chat gets it. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Does anybody know? Does anybody know? I think I will give it Kim Pasqualetto. Its official title is The Ministry of Silly Walks, and it is a Monty Python sketch. It actually comes from Monty Python's Flying Circus Series 2, Episode 1, to give it its proper reference. Yes, I would encourage you to silly walk at any time point that you can in your life and have a good time. It's 4:31. I'm pretty impressed that we only went a minute over. The recording will be available as well, so you can check onto our website, onto our recordings page if you want to check back on any of that information. But again, huge thanks to you fantastic creators. Thank you to everyone who came. Look at this, sharing your evening, afternoon, maybe tomorrow. We normally get some people from overseas. Thank you so much. And we are so excited for you to share a walking curriculum for the early years. See you at the next party. Toot toot. Goodbye, everyone.